Let's talk about some hardware do's and don'ts real quick. We talked about one of these already. What's the one don't we talked about already? No metal. In general, just no metal writing on the panel. Pretty much any other stylus is great, providing it works for what you want. Do use it. Do let kids use it. Do clean it. How do you clean it? So cleaning goes into the don't. Don't spray liquid on it. Spray liquid on a cloth and wipe it down.
Just what type of?
Don't use Windex. Ammonia. 99% of the time, if what you're worried about is finger smudges and it not looking nice, water on a paper towel or water on microfiber cloth, even better, or even just a microfiber cloth will clean it. So don't spray liquid on it. Don't use anything like Windex that has ammonia in it, that quick drying streak kind of thing. So pretty much that's the don'ts. So pretty easy to follow, pretty low stress. But do use it, do let kids use it, do clean it, all of those things. It's very durable. You're not going to hurt it. Your kids aren't going to hurt it. It's built to be in that classroom. I mean, I don't suggest showing kids that. I don't suggest throwing things at it, but those things are not going to hurt it. Even metal is unlikely to hurt your panel. It's just more likely to sound awful. So it's an easy don't, and then there's no question about it. Other questions? Do turn it off. Woo. When do you turn it off? You turn it off whenever you don't want it on. Primarily when you leave at the end of the day, just make sure the screen is black. Just so that you're not using this. This has about a 50,000 hour life. So if you turn it on when you walk in the morning and you turn it off when you leave in the evening, it's going to be here and look like this in 20 years. So just make sure you turn it off when you leave, basically. If you don't want it during the day, just turn it off.
Should it be unplugged?
Unplugging is a little bit, it goes along with next to the power plug, there is a toggle switch for the master power that powers the speakers and the touch sensors and all of that. If you're going to be gone for more than a long weekend, I tend to toggle the toggle switch off just because things might move around. You don't know what the weather's going to be like. If there's a big storm, it's going to be super windy. You're not sure if the power is going to go out. That might be another time you toggle it off and or unplug it. But typically, the only time I would really unplug it on purpose is like during spring break or winter break, the summer, when you know it's going to be a week or that you're going to not use it. Then just because of coming and going, I might unplug it. Does that make sense? So,
Do most of them already have if they're on for a while, they'll shut off if they're not in use? Like an internal type?
some of them do. The new panel actually doesn't shut off by itself because this one does have a timer on it that you can set. A lot of teachers end up turning the timer off because I put directions up here and then I go and I'm working with kids and who knows, it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour that the information is here, but we haven't interacted with it. So there is the potential to have it turn itself off. The new panel will turn itself off after 2 hours of no one interacting with it. So it'll just go black. So there are some things like that, but generally just make it black if you aren't using it. With that, you do have a remote. So the remote looks like this. It does have that power button. Your volume buttons are really useful on your remote. The one button that's on the remote that isn't on the front of the panel is the square with the X. These are in those notes that I gave you those links for. That's your blank button. So it's just going to take that picture away. So if you want to set something up and not have it showing, and then push that again, it will come back. Or if you have something up here that's distracting or you need attention, you can take that input away just by clicking that square with the X. Below that is a snowflake. The snowflake will freeze the screen just like your projector. So especially if you have something under your document camera and you just want that picture to stay put, you don't want kids to be able to come up and draw on the panel, move things around. The snowflake will just freeze, and it says freeze. When you push it again, it will be live again. So those are 2 buttons. The snowflake also is on the front of the panel. So, but the blank button is only on your remote. So sources. You have a source button. It's a square with an in arrow. So it looks like this. If you want to hardwire your computer, that's one option. You might have a document camera via VGA plugged in that way, or HDMI. So you do have ports here on the front for that. You do have ports on the back and on the side for that as well. So your source button will let you choose where those other things are plugged in. So for you, anything that's plugged in and turned on will have a green light. So if you plug a computer in, you'll be able to tell where it's plugged in. HDMI 1 is the plug on the front of the panel. So that's easy. Number 1 is on the front. The others are all labeled. So if you look at where you're plugging the plug into, it actually tells you which they are.
Is that the only way to project student work? Is by hardwiring it up there?
That is not the only way to project student work. That is a fantastic question. So we'll kind of lead into that as we talk about sources. So your computers, if you were to hardwire your computers, let me see what this is. Oh my goodness. This has an HDMI. So you need some sort of adapter for your computer, if you're a Mac person, ideally to get to HDMI. So with the new panel, it doesn't matter where you plug in. With this panel, I suggest you plug in to the port on the side of the panel between the 2 antennae. There's a port that says HDMI in. That's where I suggest you plug in. We'll talk about why here in just a second. So you see 2 cords up here. One cord is your HDMI. That's for what? What goes through HDMI? Do you guys know? Your picture and your sound. So this is your picture and your sound. So especially in the boardroom, if all they want is to show what's on their computer, that's all they would need is the HDMI. If I want to touch up on the panel and interact with my computer, I also need a USB cord. So this is for your data, for your interaction. So just like an old smart board, you would want 2 cords. So both of them plugging in between those 2 antennae. So your HDMI and USB if you're using your computer. Does that make sense? So if they want to kind of touch and interact and move things around and open files from the panel, they need both cords. So that's one option for you to plug in. Like I said, your Macs, you need an adapter for whatever port you have on your Mac to HDMI. This panel has one stuck behind it, so we can look at that. So those are the 2 cords that you might use to plug your computer in. Why would I plug my computer in? I would plug my computer in if I have something that at the moment requires flash. So flash is not something you're going to find on the panel. Flash is going away. For now, things that require flash, I would probably plug in and use from my computer. If you have specific applications that you installed on your computer, language programs, things like that, then I might plug my computer in. Someone else mentioned, as we started, hardwiring your panel. So there are certain times if you're playing a video, it might be better to hardwire than to try and use Wi-Fi. It lags sometimes, depending on what's happening on the network. If you feel like you need your panel hardwired, that's something that IT would need to deal with. So, Angelica, do you have a process for hardwiring?
No, all of them should have the cords.
Okay.
Already in the back. They're already plugged in and they're sort of moved around in the back. At least they should be. At least all the new ones have that.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the old ones, if they have that same thing or not. If they aren't, they should be in the bag where like the pens and all that stuff's at. If they're not there, let us know.
Okay.
See if we can get it for you.
So you should be able to hardwire your panels. So that's the best case scenario. That's going to take out some of those other Wi-Fi pieces, because Wi-Fi can be fun, depending on the time of day and the day of the week and all of those things that you don't have control over. But typically, I would plug my computer in if I'm using Flash. Are any of you familiar with Active Inspire? So Active Inspire is another reason that I might choose to plug my computer in, because that interaction has the highest quality if I physically plug in. So definitely something that I might plug in for. But other than those 2 things, where's most of the things that you interact with your curriculum? Where do they live? They live online. They live in your drive. So all of those are things that you can access directly from your panel that you wouldn't need your computer for. So there are ways to plug in if you need to, but most of the time I would say you probably won't need to physically plug in a device. Yeah.
It's really good for substitute teachers too. So what I do, I had a problem in the class with subs being able to follow the curriculum and what I do. Shocker. So now what I do is on my lesson plans, it's a how-to, here's the password for the Promethean panel, and then when you bring up the Wi-Fi on the Promethean panel, it's got my 2 tabs for really great reading and study sync already there. Mm-hmm. Everything's already plugged in. All they have to do is go in and then scroll down to the lesson, and then they have full classroom instruction through that without me having to leave tech behind or mess with any of that stuff. And I always leave my phone number if you need anything text. Last guy was like, it says 2347. I said, no, 2341, that's the passcode. But then it was smooth sailing, and they're actually following along doing the same instruction I would do in the classroom on a daily basis.
Which is super helpful. Yeah. Then you don't lose that time.
Well, and then, I mean, because like with the really great reading, it's a huge instruction manual of like scripted, you have to read this, that bypasses that. So instead of getting 20 minutes of let's see what we're supposed to do here, it's okay, open your books to blah, 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 and then they have the lessons on the board together.
Awesome. Yeah, so definitely being able to set some of that up. The other thing I often encourage teachers to do is find those kids who can do it. Find those kids that you trust, find those kids that you know, because you all have them. They're all in your room. Then the challenge is getting the sub to trust those kids too. Be like, really, I left their name for a reason. Like, they really know how to deal with this if you get in trouble. I was at another district recently that started a tech squad. So they started training 5th and 6th graders to be tech support for their teachers. They're an elementary school district, so those are the oldest kids they have. But these kids go around and they check in with teachers and say, hey, how's your tech going? Hey, these kids can do it. They don't hesitate to do it. So empower them with some of that. Hey, if I have a substitute, this is how you can help them. So the other thing that we can talk about is bookmarking. So you also could add bookmarks to some of those things that you want subs to go to or things you go to. For sure. So, remote, cleaning, buttons on the front of the panel. There are 2 other buttons on the front of the panel. On this panel, there is a button that looks like this. I have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers. So this button will turn touch off. On this panel, that's going to go away here right now. So if you walk in and for some reason, like it looks like it should work, but it doesn't work, try that button that has that little finger on it. Make sure it says touch on, because you don't know whose fingers walked past and touched what buttons on their way out of the classroom or on the way back in or any of those things. It can be a great thing just to do, and then you don't have to worry about which fingers are up here, who's moving things around. But it begs the question, if touch is off, how do you interact with this? So my favorite interaction tool is one of these. Any of you have one of these? So this is just a USB wireless mouse. So it has this little receiver that I can plug into the front of the panel. And as long as my battery's not dead, I feel like maybe last time I tried to use it, the battery was dead. Go figure, the battery is still dead. But if my battery weren't dead, I would be able to move around just like the mouse on my computer. So this also lets you move around the room. It means you don't have to be in the front of the classroom to change that passage, to turn on a tool, to help kids, to spin the spinner. You could just use a tool like this. So that wireless mouse might be a great tool for you. For those of you who do a lot of typing, you can get a wireless mouse and keyboard. So if you need that ability to type, you can get a keyboard and mouse together. You can get them at Target for $20. So these aren't huge investments, but they may make a difference in your instruction depending on how you teach. These you can get at Target or pretty much anywhere for about $10. So the ability to kind of move around the classroom and interact. We were talking about the touch off button, so it looks like this on the front of the panel.
Okay.
So making sure that if at some point you walk up and you can't tap, you can't touch, you're like, it looks like it should work, but it's not working, make sure it says touch on.
And then how do you use those? I mean, how do you connect them? I guess is what I asked.
So I like the ones that come with a little dongle, I don't know what else to call it, receiver, and I just plug that into the USB on the front of the panel.
Okay, so the keyboard and both of those would plug in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The keyboard that I like has a keyboard and a trackpad on the end of it, so it's one piece. So I don't like have a mouse and a keyboard and not know where they went and where I put them down and where I walked off with them. It's just one tool, depending on whether you want a keyboard or whether just a mouse. This is nice because it's kind of pocket size. I can just kind of keep it in my pocket for when I need it, except for when I forget to put a new battery in it. So touch off. The next button has 3 lines. I turned touch back on. 3 lines will give you your menu. So you see 3 lines in our pink toolbox, 3 lines. Let me move my toolbox in the front of the panel. On this panel, the only one of these I ever really use is the light bulb. So that's going to let me control the brightness. So depending on how much light is coming in the windows, whether we're watching a movie, what we're doing, I may want to turn that brightness up or down. So that's the 3 lines and then the light bulb.
Is that also on the other board?
On the other panel in your locker, there's a little gear for settings that will have your brightness and your volume. On the other panel, that's also where you can turn palm erase on or off, and where you turn on what's called your second pen. So on that panel, this side is an eraser, and this side is a pen.
You can do that on the, so what does it say? Like
It says second pen.
It says second pen?
Mm-hmm.
In the settings?
Mm-hmm.
And that means that I can use an eraser?
It means that something this size will erase,
Okay.
something this size will write.
Okay.
But if you have a student who needs a larger tool, you might want to turn that off so their larger tool is treated like a pen. So you have those settings. So that is, let me go find that picture. So here in your locker, one of the things in your locker, the first is all of your apps. Below that, there's a little gear. So your little kind of gear icon, those are all your settings. And there's only 4 of them in there that you can see. So you'll be able to find it. All of those settings are in there. Any other kind of hardware questions? Taking care of it, turn it on when you want it, turn it off when you don't want it. So, how do we show student work? On our panel, let's go back home. We have an app called ActiveCast. ActiveCast is a way that we can wirelessly show information from any device that's on the Wi-Fi, so that's on the network. So with all of your Apple devices, you're going to use Airplay. So on an iPad, you're going to swipe up and say screen share. On your PC or on your Mac, you have a little icon that looks like a square. I don't remember. Does the arrow go down? So there's a triangle at the bottom and a square, like that. So this is your Airplay symbol. So you're looking for this name in that list, QTL board _ promo. So if you look right now, that's the name you're looking for. This panel has a password set. Especially for the younger kids, I would take this password off. For the older kids, I would absolutely use this password. So I can show up to 4 devices at a time. So I can have 2 students showing their work and we can be doing that comparison. I could have 2 different board members showing different examples of something, or a spreadsheet and the plan, or whatever that might be, as long as they're on the network. So.
What network are you on here?
This is on Walook, but I don't know that it matters.
It does matter.
It does matter.
Yeah, because mine constantly goes to the district office because I'm right beside it.
Ah.
And I won't find my stuff, so then I have to change my settings.
I think you could tell it to forget the district office.
Yeah, but
But-
they told me if I do, then I go to training, then I won't find it. So that means like, go.
So can anyone see this right now?
So,
No. This says MES.
The large problem in the boardroom is they often don't use connection. So we are you saying that they should plug in?
Yep. If you're concerned about Wi-Fi, if you're concerned about connection, plugging in is the best option. For kids' work on iPads, that's not really a good option. So this is that best option for especially student work on
I was
iPads.
able to find it on MES Radius. And all you do is MES Radius.
Okay.
And if you type in the username and password you would use for your computer to log on your other email or your other Wi-Fi, it'll work.
I think it's usually like if you have the right tool name, if it's Wall Loop or Radius, I think either one will work because it's the same Wi-Fi.
Ah.
The Wall Loop is just a higher password.
Yep, it's under MES Radius. It was not under the district office one.
We love Wi-Fi. We've already discussed how much we love Wi-Fi. So not only do you have a PIN code if you want it, but you also have the ability to allow or deny that to happen. So when I press allow, we will see that device wirelessly. What do I have now? I still have all of those tools, so I can still write on top of that student work. I can still point things out. So
you can. Okay. The reason I ask this
Yes.
is because when I screenplay, like mine, like I'm teaching a math lesson or something, and I've got it up there, I can't write on it. It just wants to move the stuff places. Like I can't, draw on.
So I would find this tool.
Okay, what is that one called?
It's the Annotate Tool.
Okay.
And it will just be in your unified menu. And it will say Annotate. It's a pencil with a squiggle.
Okay.
So we talked about the timer tool and the spinner and the Annotate tool.
Okay.
So the Annotate tool gives me this nice little toolbar with quick options to highlight, to write, to annotate on whatever I'm seeing. Okay. So looking for this, making sure you're on whatever this is, MES or admin or IT, or make sure you're on that same Wi-Fi. So multiple devices, kids' iPads, that's, for me, this is the best way to get stuff off of iPads.
So it says, I don't have iPads, we have Chromebooks. So for the Chrome extension, if they already have that, she said they already have that on there. Then they just open that up and.
So how do you get multiple though? I understand how one person can,
Just
they
put
have.
it in the code editor. Yep.
We'll put it where?
You just do the same thing. If two people do the same thing and I hit accept twice, they'll appear next to each other.
Oh, so we'll have little screens on there. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yes, and when I do that, if I double tap on one of them, it will make it full screen.
Okay.
If I double tap again, it will get smaller and I'll see all of the screens that I have sharing. So yes, so from Chromebooks, from iPads, from your computer, from anything that's on this Wi-Fi.
They should all have the active cast on the Chromebooks if you have them. If you're not seeing them, let us know and we can push this out real quick.
So at the end of your address bar, you'll have this little icon, this little spinner icon. That's your active cast. So that should be on all the Chromebooks.
Looks like a fidget spinner.
It does look like a fidget spinner. I mean, I can understand what it's supposed to be an example of, but so definitely a great use. So anytime, especially those of you middle school, high school, anytime you click generate PIN code, it's going to change that code. So you don't have students that were there before trying to mirror again. If you have a PIN code and you don't want it, here in settings, in preferences, it says password. And if you just take that password away, there won't be a password anymore.
So where was that again? I'm sorry, I was typing.
So the gear right here
Yeah.
says settings, and it says general preferences, and it says password. So you could set something specific if you wanted to for some reason, or you can just delete it.
So where right now it says optional.
Yeah, because there's nothing there.
Okay, so why does mine randomly sometimes come up with a password? It'll be some weird number.
So you'll have like a little key right here.
Yeah.
If you tap this button,
Maybe I did it on accident then.
you're going to get a password.
Okay, so now from now on, it's just gonna, I have to use that password. So I can.
Unless you go into settings and delete it.
And delete it, okay. 'Cause yeah, I was accidentally doing it.
Yeah, if you don't know what it is and you accidentally tap that for some reason, you end up with a password, especially for the littler ones.
Yeah.
Adding another step is not a good thing. Definitely not a good thing for the little ones.
Yeah.
So ActiveCast lives here on your home screen. It also lives in that unified menu. So that's your option for wirelessly showing content. So we talked about that Annotate tool, and in that wirelessly showing content, there's another tool that I used. So we'll use this one for example anyway. There is, between your whiteboard and your Annotate tool, there's a picture with some picture corners. That is going to capture whatever you're seeing and put it in your whiteboard.
So whatever's projected on there or that you're viewing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what is that thing called?
It's called capture.
Because I think Mars says it, that's why I'm.
Yours says capture under
Yeah.
it. Mm-hmm.
So all we have to do is click it and it's instantly going to take a picture of what's there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's going to put that picture into your whiteboard.
Pretty much a screenshot.
It's exactly a screenshot. It's a screenshot that goes into your whiteboard. So now I can see a number of different things at the same time.
That's a good idea, the capture equals screenshot.
Capture equals screenshot.
Make it simple.
I'm recording all of this too, so like we'll email you the recordings of this so you can go back and look at it, and I'll have them labeled on exactly what we're talking about in one of these sections.
I took like 10 pages of notes last year, the last one, but I went to review the notes and I'm like, what was I talking about? I have to take some pictures and like.
So using that screenshot, how might you use that in your instruction? Yeah.
Okay, so if I have a concept or something that's difficult for my students, if we're doing compare and contrast or something, for example, for study sync, I will take a screenshot of it, and then we compare and contrast, and I write it on the board over the top of it. What do you see? What do you see? What do you see? And then how is it different from, that's what we use that for.
Multiple step directions, like in my classroom. Okay, first you gotta use a pencil, and you gotta use a crayon, and you gotta use scissors, and you gotta use glue. So put out those images.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be really good for life skills too, with picture directions.
So,
Right. So picture directions. I love this because if I'm playing that video, I can grab those captures throughout the video. We can then use those pictures and we can put them in the correct or in the order that they actually happened. We can talk about what do those pictures tell us. We can use them for retelling afterwards. For each picture, we're going to write a sentence and have a retell of that story that we just saw or read.
Ooh, so if you had a little story for your kids.
No, sequencing.
Yes, you can
Mhm.
see the pictures and sequencing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make the pictures though different sizes? So like I know it goes to a whiteboard and you put it on and it comes up. Okay, so you have to hit that arrow again and that can make each different picture smaller or bigger.
Mm-hmm. So with that arrow tool, let me find a place that this is too big at the moment. I can move, if I click where there isn't anything, I move my whiteboard space. If I click where there is something, I interact with that image. So sequencing is awesome. Visual directions, also awesome. Grabbing some of those passages that you're reading and being able to highlight. One of the things I love about this whiteboard is those things don't disappear when they're on the whiteboard. They're things that we can come back to and we can reference. So kind of moving a little bit from that screen capture to the whiteboard, one of the things, because this is digital, we have 3 dots here. I have the option to save. So I can save this and open it back up tomorrow and say, remember when we did that compare and contrast? Let's look at what we said yesterday. We're going to do that same thing today, but with a different story.
So how do you get rid of it? Because I did that because we were doing like paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
And now every time I open up my thing, it comes up. Or how do you make it so it doesn't come up as the first thing?
Yes, that was my question on the.
Yes, that was one of those things. Yes. So I'm going to save this. By default, saves with the date and the time.
Okay, I looked for mine forever. I'm like, we called it socks. Where is it?
So you can, with this folder and the plus button, you can start new folders. You can label them. So you could have one for 5th period, one for unit math. You could, however you organize stuff. And you can name it. I tend to, so right here I can just click.
But you have to leave all that stuff first. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can name it whatever you want.
Okay.
That just saves the date on there.
Okay. Because I was trying to double click on the icon of the thing, going, okay, this is how I do it on my computer. It's not letting me.
So this is in save. So when I save, it's going to, or save as, it's going to let me name it.
Okay.
So we'll just save that. I'm just saving it on the panel, kind of wherever it feels like going. It'll be there when I go back to open it. So I have this great work. It's fantastic. But tomorrow, or even 5 minutes from now, we're going to move on from this and we're going to do math instead of language. Or I have a new group of students. So up here, 3 dots, next to save and open, I have new.
Without saving, can you go back to class?
No.
So how do you have multiple?
Well, why would you want multiple whiteboards open?
Well, before this, I didn't know about the arrow, the mouse. So now that I know, I figured it out.
That's why, because within the context of one lesson, I'm just going to move up, down, left, right. I have that infinite space to work. When I need a new lesson, a new concept, then I'll start a new whiteboard. So the only way to flip between them is to save and open a new one. So new, step 1. Step 2, choose close. So if you have something up here that you're like, I never want to see that again, or I saved it, so I don't want to see it again until I open it. In your whiteboard, make sure you say new and then say close. That will make this be white next time you open it up.
Okay. Because it
So
doesn't save it unless you ask to save it, right?
It kind of does. It kind of like, it tries to like pay attention and
This stuff because you borrowed my board last time.
and all
I'm getting this FYD, these little tiny things that are up there, and I'm like, where is this coming?
I'm so sorry. So, new and close will take whatever that is away. If I have something up here, and what I want is to go to that website, grab that image, but I want this to be here again when I come back. Use the back arrow. Don't use home, don't use any of those other buttons. If you want that to stay there and be there the next time you open your whiteboard, use the back arrow. So if we come here to our website, this is another really creative, like I can't even imagine like how, it's so weird, like, it's that videos. So I grabbed that picture. If I want this stuff to stay, let's see if I did enough. When I hit the back arrow watch, I'm watching for a box in the middle. It says packing document. That's like that temporary save button. It's like, I want this when I come back, so keep it there because I'm still in the middle of teaching. I want to go and use this other resource, use my website, grab another image, grab something from student work, and I want that to be there when I come back. Use the back arrow. Does that make sense? So new and close, that will get you out of whatever keeps showing up every time you open. Makes all the difference in the world. So let's say open right now, and we'll open that PD whiteboard. And now we can go back to that KWL chart that we started. So ways to project kids' work using ActiveCast. So looking at that, hardwiring. If it isn't hardwired, let folks know. Work on that. Using multiple whiteboards at one time. So you can't, but now you have forever in every direction. So working towards that. Being able to write over a downloaded or projected sheet.
Which you've already done. The annotate, right?
Yeah, annotate. So, but that begs the question, if I have a worksheet that is a piece of paper and I want to write on top of it, what am I going to do?
Are you meaning like a document camera, like when we use a document camera instead of like something from our computer? Does Annotate work with that too?
So, this gets a little sticky between which panel you have, how exactly that works. If you use ActiveCast to show your computer, you can capture right over anything that's showing up here. I moved these two hardwired cords over to the side, and I can use, we'll come back to what I'm doing right now, I promise. Something that's called HDMI in. So HDMI in on this panel will let you capture and write over your computer if you're hardwired. If your document camera plugs in with HDMI, using HDMI in will let you write and capture your document camera.
Otherwise,
with this panel. How many of you have a document camera that only has a USB cord? Any of you have that new document camera?
I know the older one is the HDMI and the.
So the older one, if it has HDMI, that's great. If you plug it in right there between these two antennae and use this icon, then you can write over it, you can capture it. Your USB document camera.
Because even then on the document camera itself, it lets you freeze. So
Mhm.
yeah.
The USB only document camera, you need the USB camera app. So we'll write that down at the moment because we're talking about document cameras, but we'll come back to apps. The USB camera app will allow you to plug that document camera here into the front of your panel and project those documents and write on top of them and capture them and do whatever you want. So your document camera is a great option. How else could you capture a picture of a worksheet or of student work or something students built and get it online?
You can use the active cast.
You could use ActiveCast, but what would you have taken the picture with? Your phone or your computer? What I love is and I don't know if it's on here. Drive. So how do you use Drive?
By uploading it to Google Drive, and then I just, well, normally until I figured out that that was there, like, now, I would do it through ActiveCast. But you can very easily do it, just plug your drive into, would you have to put it in on your account on there, though, or could you do a shared drive?
Doesn't matter. As long as whatever account is on here can access. So I take my phone. The great thing about Google Drive on your phone is you can take pictures directly into Google Drive. I don't really like using my phone with ActiveCast. Why? Because I have pictures from over the weekend and of, things my friends sent me and things, ideas for gifts for people. Those aren't all things that I want kids to see up here. And that text from my husband and the email from my grandfather that's a forward that I didn't even really want. I don't want those things being shown up here.
No, we might be related.
So if I capture those directly into a Google Drive folder, I can access that Google Drive folder here, and I don't have to cast my phone. It's helping separate personal from school, keep you safe, because I don't want you in that position, because we're all adults. We all do things that aren't school friendly on occasion. And or, like I said, my grandfather sends me things that I'm like, what? Where did that come from? Okay, Grandpa, whatever. So Google Drive is a great way to digitize resources and share them. So having that folder that's shared with whatever account is up here, or giving people access to a folder and saying, whatever you want to open, drop in this folder.
A lot of people come and they have stuff on PowerPoint. They used it in Google Drive, just.
So how did you,
Let me tell you.
what did you click on to get to the screen that showed you all those apps that are on your computer?
So
you found the
we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Let's table that. Like how we get apps, we'll table that for just a minute or two.
Well, I've done it, but I can't remember. How to get Pandora for those Saturdays that I come to work.
That's right. Got a Pandora on Saturday. Absolutely. So Google Drive being a really great resource, a really great way to digitize some of those physical resources, even if it's taking pictures of the illustrations in a book for kids to sequence. It's a lot easier to do that with your phone directly into Google Drive than dealing with scanners and copiers and files, this, that, and the other thing, and emailing stuff to yourself or having someone email it to you so that you can put it. So the ability to share in that Google Drive is really, really useful up here on the panel as a way to kind of use all of those resources that you already have. And how to get rid of stuff on the whiteboard. Now we know. We're going to go to new, and then we're going to close. And then we will get rid of that stuff on the whiteboard. So let's go up over here for no good reason. All right, actually, let's do this.
Oh, I have a quick question though.
Yeah.
So you have all that stuff, scrolled over this way and that way. And if you hit that eraser that erases all, even though you're not seeing it, it's still going to erase it, right? Okay, so that's one way to scrub it all, and you don't have to go search for it.
Right, so this is going to erase. I just hit save so I can do this. So this is a great example. If I erase, it's going to erase all the writing. So if you look up there, there's no more writing anywhere, but it won't erase your images. So if you really want blank, then new is probably better. But really quickly, if something pops up and you're like, well, not doing that, just hit this erase all. It'll erase.
Do the same thing you said.
New, and then close.
Right.
New, just get rid of everything. So now when I move around, you see there's nothing up there at all. So options. And things to do. If you walk into before the board meeting, just go new, close, and then it'll be white, and you won't see last week's minutes up there or anything like that. So, images and our whiteboard. I drew a T-chart. Did you guys notice the tool I used to draw the T-chart? I used a ruler. Because until I started remodeling my house, I didn't use rulers to measure things very often, to be honest. But I do use rulers all the time to draw straight lines. And I encourage students to do the same in their notebooks. So we can quickly have that 3-column chart that I expect kids to have in their notebook. Someone said they were using graph paper. Where do you find the graph paper?
Oh, you find it in where the little,
This little hashtag right here. So I could have lines just like in their notebook. I can have graph paper just like I want them to be drawing. So you have those options of different backgrounds. You also have different background colors. So you don't have to write on that white creamish color paper if you don't want to. So you have different writing. You also have those handwriting lines. What I love about these is we can start big. And as we progress, we can get smaller, or I can get smaller for those students who are ready for more of that fine motor work. So backgrounds, all kinds of opportunities, or just blank, depending on what you're doing. So my math tools, especially my ruler, just a great tool to model with, but also just to get some of those basic grids and graphs and things. So let's look at one other thing, and then we'll go in the warm room and we'll talk about it. So I clicked the image icon right below the graph in the background. These give me charts and templates that Promethean has provided. So things like that Venn diagram. So for compare and contrast, things that are the same in the middle.
Can you make that bigger? Like, okay.
Like how big?
Not just saying, I want to monster Venn diagram.
Monster big Venn diagrams. What else? Oh, look, compare and contrast right here, 2 boxes. I have fractions, I have a clock, if you decide you want to actually teach telling time, a filled in hundreds grid or a blank hundreds grid. T-chart, speech bubble, mind maps.
The timeline is cool.
Where's the timeline? Oh, down.
Down on the bottom next to the diagram.
Oh.
That's my one.
So great for sequencing. One of the things that I love about these is once we write on them, the writing stays on them. So we can write and then I can move this up here. They can still see it as we move on to the next task. We don't just do a timeline to do a timeline most of the time, right? We do a timeline so that we can write about that sequence of events, about some of those details. So I can keep that context as we continue to move around. So good things. So these are all templates that Promethean has shared with you. Let's go in the warm room and talk about some things that might not be here that you would want to use on a regular basis.